It was supposed to be just another Saturday night, nothing out of the ordinary. My wife, Melissa, had been buzzing with excitement all week about a surprise celebration she was helping organize for her friend, Kelly. She had been planning it for days, making phone calls, shopping for decorations, and even buying a new dress for the occasion. I didn't think much of it at the time. After all, Melissa had always loved being the center of social gatherings, the one who made things happen. "Why don't you come?" she asked me the morning of the party, her tone casual but insistent. "It'll be fun, and you haven't been out in ages. Plus, it's Kelly's big night. She'd love to see you there." I wasn't exactly thrilled at the idea. Parties weren't my thing, and Melissa knew that. But she kept pressing, flashing that charming smile of hers, the one that could convince me to do just about anything. Reluctantly, I agreed, figuring it was easier to go than to keep saying no. That evening, she left early to help with the setup. She wore a stunning emerald green dress I'd never seen before, one that clung to her figure perfectly. She looked incredible, and I told her so. She smiled at me, but it felt off, forced maybe, like she was already somewhere else in her mind. "Don't be late," she said as she kissed me goodbye and walked out the door, leaving behind a faint trail of her perfume. I arrived at the party about an hour later. The house was grand, far more luxurious than anything Kelly could afford. As I walked up to the front door, I could hear the hum of music and laughter spilling out into the cool night air. For a moment, I hesitated. Something about it didn't feel right, but I brushed the thought aside and stepped inside. The atmosphere was lively, too lively for a supposed birthday party. People were mingling, drinks in hand, laughter echoing from every corner of the room. But the moment I stepped in, I felt like an outsider, like I didn't belong there. I scanned the crowd, looking for Melissa, but she was nowhere to be seen. I wandered through the house, nodding politely to strangers as I made my way from room to room. Then I heard it, a familiar laugh, one that I knew better than my own heartbeat. It was Melissa's, but it was different, louder, freer, almost flirtatious. I followed the sound to the back of the house, where a smaller group of people had gathered around the patio. That's when I saw her. Melissa was leaning against a man I didn't recognize, her hand resting lightly on his arm as she laughed at something he said. He was standing too close, his body angled toward hers in a way that made my stomach churn, and she wasn't pulling away. In fact, she seemed to lean into him, her eyes sparkling with a kind of excitement I hadn't seen in years. My feet felt like they were glued to the floor as I watched them. The man leaned in closer, whispering something in her ear. She giggled, her face lighting up as she placed a hand on his chest. My chest tightened, and my hands balled into fists at my sides. I stepped forward, unable to stay frozen any longer. As I approached, Melissa glanced up and spotted me. Her smile disappeared instantly, replaced by a look of pure shock. The color drained from her face as our eyes locked. The man beside her turned to see what had caught her attention, and when he saw me, he smirked, an arrogant, smug grin that made my blood boil. The world around us seemed to go silent. The people nearby stopped talking, their eyes darting between me, Melissa, and the man she was with. Every pair of eyes was on us now, waiting to see what would happen next. I took a deep breath, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. The words I said next left everyone speechless, including Melissa. The silence stretched on as I stood there, still staring at Melissa and the man beside her. Every fiber of my being wanted to shout, to scream, to demand an explanation, but instead, I spoke with a calmness that even surprised me. "Melissa," I said, my voice steady but cold. "Is this the kind of helping with the setup you were talking about?" The color that had drained from her face earlier didn't return. She opened her mouth as if to say something, but no words came out. The man beside her, however, didn't seem the least bit fazed. He looked me up and down with that same smug grin, like he was enjoying the spectacle. "Who the hell are you?" I asked him, my gaze never leaving Melissa. "Name's Brad," he said, his tone casual, as if we were meeting at a business launch. "And you must be the husband." I felt the surge of anger course through me. "That's right, the husband. So what exactly is going on here, Brad?" Melissa finally found her voice, though it was shaky and barely above a whisper. "Mark, it's not what it looks like." I laughed, the sound bitter and hollow. "Not what it looks like. Really, Melissa? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been having a great time while I've been sitting at home like an idiot." Brad stepped forward, putting himself between me and Melissa. "Hey man, let's not make a scene here," he said, raising his hands as if he were the voice of reason. I glared at him. "A scene? You think I'm making a scene? You're standing here with my wife, acting like you're the hero of the story, and you think I'm the problem." The tension in the air was so thick you could cut it with a knife. People around us were whispering now, their curious eyes darting between the three of us. Melissa grabbed my arm, her grip weak and desperate. "Mark, can we talk about this somewhere else, please?" I yanked my arm away. "Oh, now you want to talk? Funny, you didn't seem too interested in talking when you were cozying up to this guy." Her eyes filled with tears, but I wasn't sure if it was guilt or embarrassment, maybe both. She glanced around, clearly aware of the growing audience. "Mark," she said again, her voice cracking. Let's go somewhere private." But I wasn't about to let her off that easy, not after what I'd just seen. "Why, Melissa? So you can spin another lie? So you can tell me this is all some big misunderstanding?" Brad chuckled, and it took every ounce of restraint I had not to punch him in the face. "You've got a lot of nerve," I said, turning my full attention to him. "You think this is funny? You think it's okay to mess around with another man's wife?" He shrugged. She didn't seem too married to me. That was it. I lunged at him, my fists colliding with his chest as we both stumbled back. People screamed, and I heard Melissa shouting my name, but I didn't care. All I could see was red. Two men pulled me off him before I could do any real damage, dragging me back as Brad straightened his shirt and laughed. "You're pathetic, man," he said, shaking his head. No wonder she came to me. Melissa stepped between us, her hands raised as if to shield him. "Stop it, both of you. This isn't helping anything." "Helping?" I spat. "The only thing that would help is the truth. So why don't you start talking, Melissa? How long has this been going on?" She didn't answer. She just stood there, tears streaming down her face as the crowd around us grew quieter. "I'm waiting," I said, my voice rising. "How long?" She finally looked at me, her lips trembling. 3 months, she whispered. The words hit me like a freight train. 3 months. 3 months of lies, of deceit, of her sneaking around behind my back while I sat at home, trusting her. The room spun for a moment, and I had to steady myself against the wall. 3 months, I repeated, my voice barely audible. "You've been lying to me for 3 months." She reached out to touch me, but I stepped back. "Don't," I said, my voice firm. "Don't you dare try to comfort me right now." Brad, who had been standing silently, finally spoke up. "Look, man, you're clearly upset, but maybe you should just go home and cool off." I turned to him, my anger flaring up again. "You don't get to tell me what to do, Brad. You don't get to say anything. You've done enough." Melissa tried again. "Mark, please, No," I interrupted, my voice sharp. "You don't get to talk right now, not after what you've done." I turned and walked toward the door, my heart pounding in my chest. The whispers followed me, but I didn't care. I needed air. I needed to get out of that house before I lost what little composure I had left. As I stepped outside into the cool night, the reality of what had just happened began to sink in. My wife, the woman I thought I'd spend the rest of my life with, had been cheating on me. And the worst part? I had no idea what to do next. The cool night air hit my face as I stepped outside, but it did nothing to calm the storm raging inside me. My mind was spinning, replaying every moment of the last few months, searching for signs I might have missed. How could I not have noticed? How could I have been so blind? The sound of the party inside faded as I walked down the driveway, but I wasn't alone for long. Behind me, the door creaked open, and I heard hurried footsteps. "Mark, wait." Melissa's voice called out, trembling but insistent. I stopped but didn't turn around. "What do you want, Melissa?" I asked, my voice cold and flat. "Please," she said, her voice cracking as she came closer. "Let's just talk. You don't understand." I spun around to face her, my eyes burning with anger. "Don't understand what exactly? Is there anything to misunderstand, Melissa? I walked into a party and found my wife all over some guy named Brad. You've been cheating on me for 3 months. What part of that am I not getting?" She flinched as if I'd slapped her, but I didn't care. Whatever pain she was feeling, it was nothing compared to the gut-wrenching betrayal I felt. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I laughed bitterly. "Oh, really? And how was it supposed to happen, Melissa? Were you planning to tell me at some point, or were you just hoping I'd stay in the dark forever?" Tears streamed down her face now, but they didn't move me. It's complicated, she said, reaching out to touch my arm. I stepped back, shaking my head. Complicated? Don't insult me, Melissa. This isn't complicated. This is you betraying me, plain and simple. She broke down then, covering her face with her hands as she sobbed. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she said between sobs. I stood there staring at her, feeling a strange mixture of rage and numbness. You didn't mean for it to go this far? That's your excuse? You knew exactly what you were doing, Melissa. Every text, every lie, every moment you spent with him, you knew. Her sobs grew louder, and for a brief moment, I felt the urge to comfort her. But then I remembered Brad's smug grin and her laughter on the patio, and the anger came rushing back. I trusted you, I said, my voice trembling. I gave you everything, and this is how you repay me? With lies and betrayal. She looked up at me, her eyes red and swollen. I'm sorry, Mark, she said, her voice barely audible. Sorry, I repeated, my tone laced with disbelief. You think saying sorry is going to fix this? You think it's going to erase what you've done? She didn't answer, and the silence that followed was deafening. I could hear the faint sound of music and laughter from the house behind us, but it felt like we were in a world of our own, a world that had just been shattered. Finally, I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I can't do this right now, I said, my voice heavy with exhaustion. I need time to think. Mark, please, she said, stepping closer again. Don't walk away. We can fix this, I know we can. I looked at her, the woman I had loved for over a decade, and felt nothing but a hollow ache in my chest. I don't know if there's anything left to fix, Melissa, I said quietly. Before she could respond, I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there in the driveway, her sobs echoing in the night. I didn't go home right away. I couldn't. The thought of walking into that house, the house we had built together, made me feel physically ill. Instead, I drove aimlessly, the streets a blur as my mind raced. Where had I gone wrong? Had I been a bad husband? Had I missed something? Or was this just who she was? The questions swirled in my head, each one more painful than the last. Eventually, I found myself parked outside a 24-hour diner. The neon sign buzzed softly in the quiet night, and I decided to go in, if only to escape the suffocating silence of my car. The place was nearly empty, just a couple of truck drivers at the counter and an older waitress wiping down tables. I took a seat in the corner, away from everyone, and stared at the menu without really seeing it. When the waitress came over, I ordered a cup of coffee and nothing else. She gave me a sympathetic smile, like she could tell I was carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders, but she didn't say anything. As I sat there, sipping the lukewarm coffee, I realized I had no idea what to do next. My marriage was in shambles, my trust in Melissa completely destroyed, and I felt like I was standing at the edge of a cliff, with no idea whether to jump or turn back. But one thing was clear. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. I sat in that diner for what felt like hours, staring blankly at the chipped coffee cup in front of me. The hum of the neon sign outside and the quiet clatter of dishes from the kitchen were the only sounds grounding me in reality. My mind was a storm of unanswered questions, doubts, and above all, anger. How did we get here? Was this marriage just a lie from the start, or did it rot somewhere along the way? Eventually, I pulled out my phone. I wasn't ready to go back home, but I needed answers. My fingers hovered over Melissa's name in my contacts before I decided against calling her. What would be the point? She'd only spew more half-truths and excuses. Instead, I opened her social media accounts. Melissa had always been careful about her online presence, but tonight I was digging deeper. I scrolled through her posts, comments, and photos, searching for anything that might give me a clearer picture of what had been going on. That's when I noticed it. A seemingly innocent photo from 2 months ago. Melissa was at what she had claimed was a team-building retreat for work. In the background, partially blurred but still recognizable, was Brad. My stomach churned as I studied the image. It wasn't just his presence that bothered me. It was the way she was smiling. It was the same smile she used to reserve for me, the one that made me feel like the luckiest man in the world. Fueled by a mixture of dread and determination, I kept digging. I checked her tagged photos, comments from coworkers, even her check-ins. Slowly but surely, a timeline began to emerge. Late nights at work, sudden weekend errands, and those so-called retreats, all aligned with places and events where Brad seemed to appear. My hands shook as I pieced it all together. This wasn't just a fling. It was premeditated, deliberate. Every moment she spent with him was another knife in my back. But the worst discovery was yet to come. In my search, I stumbled across a group photo from a party I didn't even know she had attended. There she was, standing next to Brad, her arm looped through his. It was bad enough that she had been with him, but what caught my attention was the caption, written by one of her friends. Power couple of the night. You two are unstoppable. Unstoppable. That word echoed in my mind, fueling the fire already burning inside me. I finally decided to leave the diner. The drive home was a blur, my knuckles white as I gripped the steering wheel. By the time I pulled into the driveway, it was nearly 2 a.m., and the house was dark. For a moment, I considered sleeping in the car, but I forced myself to go inside. The house was silent, almost eerily so. I expected Melissa to be waiting for me, but instead, I found a note on the kitchen counter. Mark, I know you're angry, and you have every right to be. I'm staying at a friend's place tonight to give you space. Please, let's talk tomorrow. I owe you that much. Melissa. I crumpled the note and tossed it into the trash. Space. I muttered to myself, as if space could undo the damage she'd done. But as much as I wanted to shut her out completely, I couldn't ignore the burning need for answers. I went upstairs to our bedroom and opened her closet. If she had been this calculated about her affair, maybe there was more she hadn't told me. At first, I didn't find anything unusual, just her clothes, shoes, and a few handbags. But then I noticed a small box tucked away in the corner, partially hidden under a pile of scarves. My heart raced as I pulled it out and opened it. Inside was a collection of items that made my blood run cold. There were receipts from fancy dinners at restaurants I'd never been to, hotel key cards, and even a bracelet engraved with the initials M and B. The final item in the box was a handwritten note, folded neatly. My hands trembled as I opened it and read, Melissa, you're the only thing keeping me sane. I can't wait for the day when we don't have to hide anymore. You're my everything. Love, Brad. I sank onto the edge of the bed, the note clutched in my hands. This wasn't just a fling or a mistake. This was a full-blown relationship. She had built an entire secret life with this man, all while pretending to be my devoted wife. The realization hit me like a freight train. The woman I thought I knew, the woman I had loved and trusted for over a decade, was a stranger. As the night dragged on, I found myself spiraling deeper into my thoughts. I didn't sleep. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her with him, laughing, touching, sharing moments that should have been ours. By the time the sun rose, I had made a decision. I couldn't let her manipulate me anymore. I couldn't let her lies consume me. I needed to confront her, to hear the truth straight from her mouth, no matter how much it hurt. With a new sense of determination, I grabbed my phone and sent her a text. Come home. We need to talk. Now. Melissa arrived just after sunrise, looking disheveled and anxious. Her usual polished demeanor was gone, replaced by a nervousness that made her look like a stranger. She stepped through the door, her eyes darting toward me as I stood in the living room, arms crossed. Mark, she began, her voice shaky. Save it, I said, cutting her off. I don't want excuses. I want the truth. She swallowed hard, glancing at the box I'd placed on the coffee table. The receipts, the key cards, the bracelet, and Brad's note, displayed like evidence at a trial. Her face went pale. Where did you find that? She whispered, her voice barely audible. That doesn't matter, I replied coldly. What matters is that you explain this. Every single thing. She sank onto the couch, her head in her hands. I didn't mean for this to happen, Mark. It got out of control. I laughed bitterly. Got out of control, Melissa? This isn't some one-time mistake. You've been lying to me for months, building an entire life behind my back, and you're telling me it just happened. Tears streamed down her face, but I felt no sympathy. It wasn't like that, she said, her voice trembling. I didn't plan for this. Brad was he was there when I felt lost. You've been so distant lately. And don't you dare put this on me. I snapped. I've been distant. You've been sneaking around, lying to my face, and now you want to blame me? Her tears turned into sobs, but I refused to let her emotions distract me. How long, Melissa? I demanded. How long has this been going on? 3 months, she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. I clenched my fists, the confirmation hitting me like a punch to the gut. And you thought I wouldn't find out? Did you think I'd just go on living in ignorance while you played house with him? She shook her head, unable to look at me. I didn't know how to stop. I didn't know how to fix things between us. I stared at her, my anger bubbling over. You didn't know how to fix things? So instead of talking to me, you ran to him? Do you even care about what you've done to us? Her silence was deafening. I stood, unable to bear the sight of her anymore. I need time, Melissa. I can't look at you right now. Get out. Her head snapped up, her tear-streaked face filled with shock. What? You heard me. Go. I don't care where you go, but you're not staying here tonight. She hesitated, then nodded slowly. Without another word, she grabbed her purse and walked out the door, leaving me alone in the ruins of our marriage. The house was suffocatingly silent after Melissa left. The silence wasn't comforting, it was suffocating. But I stayed there, sitting at the kitchen table, staring at the pile of evidence I'd gathered. The anger that had burned in my chest earlier was beginning to fade, replaced by a heavy sense of exhaustion. I had decisions to make. The life I thought I knew was gone, and there was no way to undo what Melissa had done. But I couldn't sit in this limbo forever. I had to figure out what came next. I started with a phone call to my lawyer. It was a friend of mine from college, someone I trusted completely. When I explained the situation, he listened carefully, asking pointed questions about finances, property, and whether Melissa might try to complicate things. You've got the upper hand here, he said, his voice calm but firm. The evidence you have is strong, and with those financial records, she can't argue her way out of this. If you're ready to move forward, we can start drafting the paperwork. Hearing those words, move forward, made everything feel a little more real. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was determined. Later that day, I packed a small bag and left the house. Staying there felt unbearable, like being trapped in a mausoleum filled with memories I didn't want to relive. I booked a room at a modest hotel across town, somewhere quiet where I could think clearly. As I sat on the edge of the unfamiliar bed, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Melissa. Mark, please, I'm begging you. Don't do this. Please let me come home so we can work this out. I stared at the message for a long time before typing out a response. There's nothing to work out. You made your choices. Now I'm making mine. I hit send and turned off my phone. I couldn't deal with her right now. Not her pleas, not her excuses. The next morning, I met with my lawyer in person. We went over the details of the divorce process, and he reassured me that things would move quickly if Melissa cooperated. She doesn't have much leverage, he said, sliding a folder across the table. You've got proof of infidelity, and with no kids involved, it simplifies things. She might try to fight for the house, but given the circumstances, she won't get far. His words gave me some sense of control, a feeling I hadn't had in days. But as I left his office, a thought gnawed at the back of my mind. What about Brad? He'd been just as complicit in this mess, smugly standing there while my marriage crumbled. He deserved consequences too. That evening, I did something I never thought I'd do. I called Brad. I'd found his number in one of the receipts Melissa had carelessly saved, and after some hesitation, I hit dial. Hello. His voice was casual, almost bored. It's Mark, I said, my tone sharp. There was a pause, then a chuckle. Didn't think I'd hear from you again. What do you want? I gripped the phone tightly. I want you to know this isn't over. You might think you've gotten away with something, but you haven't. Melissa isn't the only one who's going to face the consequences of this. He laughed again, that same infuriating arrogance dripping from his voice. Look, man, I get it. You're upset. But whatever's between you and Melissa, that's your problem, not mine. You made it your problem the moment you got involved, I snapped. And I promise you'll regret it. Before he could respond, I hung up. My hands were shaking, but I felt a grim satisfaction. He wasn't going to walk away from this unscathed. As I sat in the quiet of the hotel room that night, I realized something. I wasn't just fighting to move on. I was fighting to rebuild myself, to take back control of my life. Melissa and Brad had taken enough from me. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something new. The days that followed were a blur of legal meetings, emotional confrontations, and long nights spent alone staring at the ceiling of my hotel room. Melissa tried to reach out repeatedly, bombarding me with calls and messages, but I ignored them all. I had nothing left to say to her. The divorce papers were filed within a week. My lawyer moved quickly, ensuring that everything was airtight. Melissa didn't contest much. She knew she had no ground to stand on. The The finances and the life we had built together were divided, but the emotional wreckage was all mine to bear. About a month later, I received a message from a mutual acquaintance, someone I hadn't spoken to in years. "You need to see this," it read, followed by a link. Curiosity got the better of me, and I clicked it. It led to a post on social media, one that had gone viral in our circle. It was about Brad. Apparently, I wasn't the only one he had been fooling. A woman had come forward, claiming he had been stringing her along while seeing multiple women, Melissa included. The comments were brutal, exposing him as a serial liar and manipulator. Melissa's name wasn't mentioned directly, but people knew. The whispers began to circulate, and her pristine social image crumbled overnight. I should have felt vindicated, but all I felt was a hollow sense of closure. Brad's downfall didn't erase what had happened, but at least it was justice of some kind. Weeks turned into months, and I slowly began to rebuild my life. I sold the house. It was too full of memories I didn't want, and moved into a smaller place across town. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Therapy helped more than I thought it would. Talking to someone neutral allowed me to process everything without the weight of judgment. I wasn't the same person I had been before, but maybe that was a good thing. One day, out of the blue, Melissa showed up at my new place. She looked different, tired, worn down, like the weight of her choices had finally caught up with her. "I'm not here to beg," she said, her voice soft. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry, Mark. Truly, for everything." I stared at her, searching for some hidden motive, but there was none. For the first time in months, she seemed genuine. "I appreciate that," I said, my tone measured. "But it doesn't change anything. We're done, Melissa. We've been done." She nodded, tears brimming in her eyes, but she didn't argue. "I hope you find happiness again," she said before turning to leave. As I watched her walk away for the last time, I felt an unexpected sense of peace. This isn't the life I planned, but it's the one I have now, and for the first time in a long time, I feel free. Free to start over, free to find myself again. Melissa's betrayal broke me, but it didn't destroy me. In the end, I learned that even in the face of devastation, there's always a way forward. And that's exactly where I'm headed.